He stopped being the loyal guardian and became part of the background, like a forgotten fence that was simply there. But here's the part no one expected. One day, the dog stopped, looked at the farm, and made a decision that would change his life forever. Have you ever felt like that dog? Have you ever been in a place where you gave your all only to realize that you became invisible, whether in relationships, at work, or even with close people? That constant presence that others stop noticing? And the most ironic part is that, as philosopher Carl Jung said, what we do not face in ourselves, we will sooner or later find as fate. If we do not recognize our own worth, if we allow others to define us, we will end up trapped in a cycle where we are ignored and discarded, while we cling to places that do not serve us well. But here's the secret. You don't need to beg, justify, or try to convince anyone. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is withdraw in silence, because absence carries a weight that presence can never match. Now stay with me in this video as we explore what happens when you decide to stop accepting less than you deserve. And if you identify with this story, if you've ever felt that others do not value who you are or what you do, then this message is for you. Before we continue, if this topic resonates with you, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel, because here you will find more reflections like this that will help you find strength and clarity in your life. What did that dog do in the end? What did the owners learn? Stay with me, because what's coming could change the way you see your relationships forever. Imagine that old dog walking into the woods. Every step he took was an act of liberation. He didn't look back. He didn't hesitate. For the first time in years, he breathed fresh air and felt the ground beneath his paws, free from expectations, free from the noise of those who took him for granted. He drank from a clear stream, something he had forgotten, how good it tasted. And there, under the shade of a tree, he lay down, free from everything. But most of all, free from the indifference that had slowly consumed him over the years. Do you realize the power of that moment? Because, although you may not realize it, we've all been that dog at some point. We stay in places that do not value us. We endure relationships where we give without receiving. And we accept jobs that drain our energy while convincing ourselves that everything is fine. Why? Because fear paralyzes us. The fear of loneliness, of the unknown, of not being enough. We tell ourselves that maybe tomorrow things will change. But you know what? As Carl Jung said, solitude doesn't arise from being alone, but from not being able to communicate what is important to you. And in those environments where you are neither heard nor valued, you are already alone, even when surrounded by people. Here's the truth no one wants to tell you. Staying in a place that does not value you is not loyalty, it's self-neglect. But changing, taking that step, is terrifying, isn't it? Because when you decide to leave, there are no guarantees. You don't know what you will find on the other side. However, that is where the magic lies, because the simple act of walking away, of saying this is enough, is a powerful message to yourself. It's like telling your own soul, I am enough. I am worthy of being appreciated. Think about your own life. Maybe you are in a relationship that you feel is draining you. Maybe you are in a job where you are just a number. Maybe you are surrounded by people who only seek you when they need something. And here's the crucial point. What are you sacrificing by staying there? Your peace? Your happiness? Your time? Maybe even your health? Now think about this. If the guard dog had waited one more day, one more week, one more year, what would have happened? Probably, he would have ended up broken, empty, a shadow of what he once was. But he didn't. He got up and left. The hardest part about leaving is the silence that follows. That doubt that creeps into your mind, asking if you made the right decision. It's the same doubt the farm owners felt that night when they heard the wolves howl. Because in the end, it's when something disappears that its true importance is felt. The owners searched for the dog, called his name, but it was too late. What they once had was no longer there. Have you ever felt like someone only notices your value when you are no longer around? That's the power of absence. It's not about revenge or pride. It's about realizing that sometimes people don't appreciate what they have until they lose it. And you, just like that dog, deserve more. You deserve to be in a place where you are seen, heard, and valued. What would have happened if the dog had decided to stay? That question lingers, but it also brings with it a deep reflection. What will happen if you decide not to leave? What parts of you will continue to disappear slowly while you settle for being invisible? But most importantly, what could happen if you decide to get up, walk toward the unknown, and find your own shade under a tree in the forest? Stay with me, because now comes the most revealing part. I will show you how to identify those dynamics where you are being invisible, and most importantly, how to start reclaiming your worth without needing to depend on anyone else. Because as Carl Jung said, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of others. What darkness are you allowing to consume you? If this is resonating with you, if you feel like this story is somehow also yours, stay with me. We are going to break down how you can regain your freedom, no matter how long you've been trapped in that metaphorical farm. So, how do you reach that moment where you decide to get up and leave? Because let's be honest, it's not easy. The dog didn't leave the farm overnight. He probably spent nights under the moon, looking at the house he once protected, wondering if he should stay just a little longer, if he should endure. Because that's what we do. We endure. We convince ourselves that things will change, that one day someone will recognize everything we do, as if self-love has to wait for someone else's validation. But here's the reality. No one can give you the value that you yourself don't give. Carl Jung said that what you resist not only persists, but grows in size. And the more we resist leaving behind what no longer serves us, the bigger the weight becomes in our hearts. What burdens are you carrying right now? Maybe it's a relationship that drains you because it doesn't listen or respect you. Maybe it's a job that consumes you but doesn't fulfill you. Maybe it's a friendship where you're always giving but never receiving. And all the while, every passing day takes a little piece of you. It's like carrying a backpack full of stones, believing you can handle it all. But at what cost? That backpack could represent the years you've dedicated to something or someone, your effort, your sacrifice. And of course, letting it go is scary. Because you don't know what you'll do without it. But think about this. How much more can you carry without breaking? What would happen if one day you decide to let go and see how light it could be? That guardian dog found his answer in the forest, but he didn't do it because the owners told him to leave. He did it because he understood something very simple and very powerful. He didn't have to stay where he wasn't valued. He didn't have to prove anything or justify his departure. He only had to choose his peace. And you, what could you gain if you stopped accepting less than you deserve? Sometimes we think that withdrawing is losing. We tell ourselves that if we leave, the things we leave behind will be better, and we, as if our presence wasn't essential. But that's not true. Leaving a place or a relationship where you're not valued is not a defeat. It's a silent victory because every step you take towards yourself is an act of self-love, and there's no power stronger than that. And here's something crucial. It's not always necessary to announce your departure. You don't have to explain your reasons to those who haven't bothered to understand you. Absence has its own language, one that is often clearer and more powerful than any words you could say. Like the silence that fell over the farm when the owners realized the dog was no longer there. That silence is the echo of what we leave behind when we choose ourselves. It's a reminder that our presence was never as obvious as others thought, and that without us, things are not the same. But the real question is not what happens to them when you leave, but what happens to you. Because when you decide to walk away, something inside you changes. It's as if, for the first time, you look within and see who you really are, without the need to fit into others' expectations. It's a moment of revelation, a moment in which you realize that you don't have to be a guardian for anyone else, only for yourself. But there's still a question in the air. If you decide to stay, which parts of yourself are you sacrificing? And if you decide to leave, what might you discover on the other side? And here's where everything makes sense. How long have you been forgetting about yourself by prioritizing others? It's curious how, in the name of love or responsibility, sometimes we sacrifice so much that we don't even remember who we are without those burdens. When was the last time you sat in silence and asked yourself what you want for you, what you need? Jung said that the privilege of life is becoming who you truly are, but that privilege is only reached when we stop searching for our identity and what others expect of us. It's easy to get lost in the day-to-day, justifying our decisions. I can't leave this because they need me. I can't change because what will happen to them? Or worse, if I leave, maybe they'll realize I was never that important. But that's not the root of the problem. The fear is discovering that our presence is replaceable, that the world keeps turning without us. However, here's the twist. It's not about whether you are or aren't replaceable, but whether you are willing to keep living as if you were a secondary option. Think about it this way. You are a tree with strong roots. But if those roots are buried in barren soil that doesn't nourish or support you, how long can you survive before you wither? It doesn't matter how much sun you receive. If the soil doesn't feed you, you'll never bloom. So what ground are you choosing today? Sometimes the answer isn't in seeking more approval or trying harder. Sometimes what you need is to move your roots, to look for a place where you can truly grow. Because just like the dog that left the farm, perhaps what you'll find outside is the peace you could never achieve by staying. And here's something important. Leaving doesn't mean giving up. It means choosing yourself. It's a simple concept, but so powerful. When you decide to leave, when you decide to set a boundary, you're not losing anything. You're gaining space for yourself, for your dreams, for your well-being. And if, in the process, other people have to face the consequences of your absence, that's no longer your burden. Sometimes your departure is the lesson others need to learn to value you. Do you realize how deep this is? Every time you say no to something that doesn't do you good, you're saying yes to a fuller, freer life. But that no is not always easy to say. It often comes with fear, doubt, that voice in your head that says, "What if I'm wrong?" But here's something I want you to remember. Making a mistake in the pursuit of your well-being is not a mistake. It's an act of courage. Now, I want to know from you, have you ever felt like you're giving too much to someone or something that doesn't appreciate it? Leave it in the comments because I'd love to hear your perspective. And if this story and reflection are resonating with you, like this video and subscribe to the channel. There will be more content like this where we explore together how to find clarity, strength, and purpose in every decision we make. But this doesn't end here, because there's still something crucial to discuss. How does it feel to leave the void behind? And what does it teach us about ourselves and others? Stay tuned, because what's coming next could change the way you see your own decisions forever. That void we're talking about, that space you leave when you decide to leave, is not just an absence. It's a powerful presence that forces others to face a truth they were avoiding before. When the dog left the farm, what remained wasn't just the lack of a guardian. What remained were the echoes of his unrecognized loyalty, the nights he watched in silence, the days he stayed faithful despite neglect. And even though the owners didn't understand it while he was there, his departure left them with something impossible to ignore, the need to value what they had lost. Do you realize how transformative this is? Because we're not just talking about physical absence, but the emotional impact it generates. It's like when you leave behind a mirror in the place you once occupied. And those who look at it don't see your reflection. They see their own. They see all the times they ignored you, all the opportunities they had to show you that you were important and that they let slip by. Jung said that what we deny submits us, but what we accept transforms us, and absence does precisely that. It forces people to accept what they had been denying. But here's something you need to know. that impact won't always be immediate. Sometimes people take time to realize what they've lost, just like the owners of the farm didn't realize until the wolves came. And in the meantime, you might be tempted to look back, to question whether you made the right decision. But it's in those moments of doubt where the real transformation happens. Because every step you take forward, away from what didn't value you, is a step toward a more authentic and fulfilling life. Imagine that you are like a lighthouse at night. Your light has always been there, guiding, helping, illuminating the way for others. But what happens if no one appreciates that light? What happens if they simply get used to it and never stop to think about what it means? Then one day you decide to turn off that light and walk away. And it's in that darkness where people finally understand how much they depended on you, how much value your presence had. The challenge here is not to fall into the trap of returning too soon, of trying to fill that void because you're afraid of what might come next. Remember, it's not about getting revenge or making others suffer. It's about giving yourself permission to choose something better, something that nourishes you instead of draining you. And speaking of choices, have you ever asked yourself what you could achieve if you redirected all that energy you put into others toward yourself? We often tell ourselves that we don't have time to take care of ourselves, to pursue our own dreams, because we're too busy helping others reach theirs. But what would happen if you stopped being the guardian of the farm and became the creator of your own world? When you make that decision, something magical happens. You begin to attract the right people, the ones who value your light without needing you to explain it. You find spaces where your roots can grow strong, and where your energy is not only recognized, but celebrated. And most importantly, you discover that self-love is not a destination, but a journey that you choose to walk every day. But there's still something to explore. What to do when the people you left behind try to get you back, when they seek you out, because they finally understood your value? How can you know if it's genuine, or if they just want to fill the void you left? If this resonates with you, stay tuned, because there's something deeper we need to discover together. The answer to this question could change not only how you see others, but also how you see yourself. When you decide to leave and people begin to notice your absence, something fascinating happens. Some will try to find you. They will realize, perhaps for the first time, how much you filled their days, how your energy, your words, or even your simple presence gave them stability. But here's where an essential question comes in. Is their interest genuine, or are they simply reacting to the void you left? It's important to remember that not all reconciliations are good, and not all second chances lead to something better. Jung used to say that the encounter between two people is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there's a reaction, both are transformed. So when someone comes back, it's crucial to observe whether that transformation has occurred. Is there a real change in their attitude, or are they just looking to repair the comfort they lost when you left? This is where you need to look beyond the words, because anyone can tell you, "I miss you," or "I realize I need you." But what's behind those words? Actions are the true language of change. If someone is willing to show you with actions that they value you, then maybe there's something to explore. But if it all stays in empty promises, then that person is not trying to reconnect with you, but with the version of you that used to fulfill their expectations. This brings us to another crucial point. Not everyone deserves your return. Leaving a place or relationship where you weren't valued was an act of self-love, a declaration that you wouldn't accept less than you deserve. So if you decide to go back, make sure it's because there's truly space for you, a space where you can be yourself without compromising your peace or dignity. Think of it this way. If the dog had returned to the farm after being sought after, but the owners hadn't changed their treatment of him, he would have returned to the same cycle of indifference. However, if the owners had rebuilt their home, not just to protect themselves from the wolves, but to create a place where the dog could be happy and cared for, then there would be a genuine opportunity for something new. And you, how can you know if it's time to close the door or open a window? Here's a key. Your intuition knows more than you think. Carl Jung called it the inner voice. that connection to our essence that guides us toward what is authentic for us. If something inside you tells you it's time to move on, listen. But if you feel there's a possibility of rebuilding based on mutual respect, then it's worth considering. Remember, the purpose of leaving was never to punish anyone, but to reclaim your value and your peace. And now, if someone returns, you're not obligated to accept their presence. You can thank them for the lessons you learned and move forward, knowing that every decision you make is an investment in your well-being. Have you ever asked yourself how your life would change if you stopped feeling responsible for the happiness of others? It's liberating and at the same time terrifying, because it means letting go of control, trusting that what's meant for you will come without you having to beg for it. There's still something more to explore, that moment when you decide whether to open up again or stay firm in your decision. How can you make sure that you're acting from self-love and not from fear or guilt? Stay with me, because this could make the difference between repeating the past or building something completely new. Making the decision to stand firm and not look back can be one of the most powerful acts you do for yourself, because deep down, it's not just about others. It's not about whether they miss you, realize their mistake, or change. It's about you and the relationship you're building with yourself. How does it feel to be your own priority for the first time in a long while? Jung said that he who looks outward dreams. He who looks inward awakens. And perhaps this is your moment to awaken, to see clearly what has always been in front of you, but that you didn't want to accept, that you don't need anyone's permission to live the life you deserve. Everything you need is already in you, waiting to be recognized and valued first by you, before anyone else. It's like a seed. For years, perhaps you convinced yourself that you depended on others to grow, that they needed to give you water, to give you sun, to take care of you. But the truth is that even in the hardest of grounds, a seed can break through the earth and reach the light if it decides not to wait for someone else to do it for it. And here's the most interesting part. When you decide not to look back, something changes in the dynamics you have with others. You no longer try to please. You no longer seek to convince. You don't need to say anything, because your actions, your energy, speak for themselves. People feel it. They feel that something has changed in you, and what they once took for granted is no longer available. It's a kind of magnetic force that activates when you choose yourself, when you decide that what you seek is not recognition, but peace. But that doesn't mean the path will be easy. There will be moments when you question if you made the right decision, if you should have given a second chance, or if you perhaps acted too hastily. It's natural, because we are programmed to seek connection, to avoid rejection, and to desire to belong. But it's precisely in those moments when you most need to remember what led you to take that step in the first place. Think of it like climbing a mountain. Halfway up, maybe you feel tired and tempted to go back, because from the top, you still can't see the full view. But if you keep moving forward, if you trust that what awaits you on the other side is greater than what you left behind, the view from the top will be worth every step. And when you reach that summit, when you look back, it won't be with regret, but with gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons, for the moments that taught you to be stronger, for the people who showed you what you didn't want to accept again, and most of all, for the courage you had to choose yourself. Now the big question is, how do you know you're moving along the right path? How do you avoid falling into the same patterns that led you to that place of devaluation? What steps can you take to build a life where you feel truly seen, loved, and appreciated without needing to settle for less? What's coming next will not only answer these questions, but also give you practical tools to stay strong, to create a life where your peace is non-negotiable, and to ensure that every decision you make is aligned with the person you truly want to be. To move forward on the right path, you first need to answer an essential question. What do you truly value in your life? Many times, we find ourselves trapped in dynamics where we prioritize what others expect from us, ignoring what truly matters. Carl Jung perfectly described it by saying, "Your vision will only clear when you look into your heart." He who looks outward dreams. He who looks inward awakens. This awakening begins when you identify what gives you peace, what fills you with energy, and what makes you feel at home with yourself. Imagine your life as a garden. For years, perhaps you filled it with plants that others asked you to care for, flowers you didn't choose, and though they look nice from afar, they mean nothing to you. But what if you could uproot what doesn't belong and plant something that truly makes you happy? That's the key, being intentional with what you allow in your life. One of the first steps to achieving this is setting boundaries, not as a barrier that pushes others away, but as a way to protect your energy, your time, and your well-being. Boundaries are not an act of selfishness, but of love. And here's the interesting part. People who truly value your presence won't see those boundaries as a problem. On the contrary, they will respect them because they know those boundaries come from a place of self-respect. On the other hand, you also need to learn to say no without guilt. Saying no is a powerful statement. It's like telling the universe, I know what I want, and I'm not afraid to protect it. However, it's not always easy. Sometimes saying no can feel like a betrayal, especially if you're used to prioritizing others. But think about this. How many times have you said yes only to end up exhausted, resentful, or lost in a cycle of people-pleasing? The power of saying no lies in the fact that it opens space for what truly matters. And this is where something amazing happens. When you start aligning your decisions with your values, the right people begin to appear, the ones who value you for who you are, not for what you can give them. This brings me to another crucial point. Surround yourself with those who elevate your energy, not those who drain it. Jung said that the encounter of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there's a reaction, both are transformed. Who are you transforming into? Do the people around you inspire you to grow, to be better, to take care of yourself? Or are you surrounded by relationships that pull you into a version of yourself you no longer recognize? It's important to understand that life is not about quantity, but quality. You don't need a large circle of people to feel complete. What you need is to surround yourself with authentic relationships where you can be yourself without fear of judgment or rejection. And sometimes, that means letting go of those who don't fit into this vision of yourself. But how do you know when it's time to let go? The answer isn't in what others do or say, but in how you feel. If a relationship, a job, or even a habit constantly leaves you feeling empty or disconnected, that's your sign. You don't need to justify yourself. You don't need to wait for a big conflict to decide that you deserve something better. The most liberating part of this process is that by letting go of what doesn't nurture you, you make room for the unexpected. New opportunities, new connections, and most importantly, a new relationship with yourself. But there's still something to explore. What happens when you're afraid of the unknown? How do you move forward without the certainty of what comes next? I want you to stay with me because what's coming next could be the key to facing that fear and finding your path to a fuller, freer life. The fear of the unknown can be paralyzing. It's that feeling of standing at the edge of an abyss, not knowing if taking a step will lead to a new life or a fall. But here's the detail we often overlook. The abyss isn't real. It's a construct of our mind, fed by years of doubts, insecurities, and experiences that made us believe we can't handle whatever comes next. Jung spoke about facing our own shadow, that corner of ourselves where we store our deepest fears. It's the key to overcoming any obstacle, and it's true. Because when you stop and face those fears head on, you realize something amazing. Most of them aren't based in reality, but in what-ifs. What if I fail? What if I end up alone? What if I'm not enough? But here's a truth that changes everything. Fear doesn't disappear by standing still. It only disguises itself as comfort, locking you into a zone where nothing changes, but everything slowly wears down. Every day you stay in that place, you lose something of yourself, your energy, your hope, your dreams. So, what can you do when fear appears? This is where everything changes. Don't fight it. Don't try to ignore it or convince yourself it's not there. Instead, use it as a beacon, because fear often points exactly to the place where you need to go in order to grow. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's also a sign that you're about to enter unknown territory, and that's where transformations happen. Imagine you are a bird that has always lived in a cage. Inside, there is security, routine, the known. But outside, there is the open sky, the wind, flight. The problem is that you can't experience both things at the same time. You have to choose. And although the cage is comfortable, eventually you realize that what you truly desire is not inside, but beyond the bars. That moment when you decide to leave the cage, despite the fear, is when you begin to discover what you are capable of. It's when you realize that fear is not an enemy, but a teacher pushing you toward your own freedom. And the best part is that by taking that first step, you begin to build evidence that you can handle it. Every small victory strengthens your confidence and shows you that you are stronger than you thought. Now, what happens if you make a mistake along the way? Because that is another big fear. Not the idea of making a decision and it not going as expected. But here's something we rarely consider. There is no mistake when you are seeking your own well-being. Every decision, even those that seem like failures, teaches you something. It brings you closer to what you need and gives you clarity about what truly matters. It's like walking through a forest at night. You may take the wrong turn or trip over a root, but every step you take brings you closer to finding the way out. And over time, you learn to trust yourself, to know that no matter what happens, you will find the way. The fear of the future is, at its core, a fear of losing control. But the truth is, we've never had absolute control, only the illusion of it. The only thing we can truly control is how we respond to what happens to us, how we choose to move forward, even when we don't see the entire path clearly. And here comes the most powerful part. When you start walking with that mindset, something changes. The opportunities you couldn't see before begin to appear. The people who resonate with your energy start gravitating toward you. And that emptiness you felt from what you left behind is filled with something greater. The satisfaction of knowing you are living a life aligned with who you truly are. Now think about this. What would happen if today you decide to take that first step? If you choose to let go of what binds you and move forward despite the fear? What could be waiting for you on the other side is not just a change, but a complete transformation. And there's even more to explore. I want you to stay here because what's coming could give you the tools to turn that fear into your greatest ally. When you decide to make fear an ally, something inside of you unlocks. You start to see that each uncertainty is not an obstacle, but an invitation to grow, to step out of that version of yourself that no longer fits in the present, and transform into something stronger, more authentic. Carl Jung said that no one becomes enlightened by fantasizing about figures of light, but by making their darkness conscious. And that's the process you are going through, recognizing what holds you back in order to finally liberate yourself. Think of it like learning to swim. At first, the water feels vast, uncontrollable, as if it could drag you under at any moment. But the more time you spend in it, the more you understand that you don't have to fight against the waves. You just need to move with them. The same happens with fear. It's not about eliminating it, but about learning to navigate it, to use its energy as fuel to move forward. And here's the most interesting part. When you allow yourself to move forward despite the fear, you discover a strength that has always been within you, but that you never activated because you were too busy trying to stay within the known. It's like you've been living in a dark room, and suddenly someone opens a window. At first, the light blinds you, but slowly you begin to see the world as it really is, with all its colors, possibilities, and paths. At this point, maybe you're wondering, how do you start? How do you take that first step when everything inside of you screams that it's safer to stay where you are? This is where the power of small decisions comes in, because you don't need to transform your life overnight. You just need to take one step, one that brings you a little closer to what you really want. Maybe it's saying no to a request you've always accepted for fear of displeasing someone. Maybe it's taking an afternoon to be with yourself instead of prioritizing everyone else. Maybe it's allowing yourself to dream of a different life, even though you don't know how to get there yet. Each of these small acts sends a powerful message to your mind: I am ready to change. And that intention is enough to start moving mountains. Because life doesn't wait for you to be completely sure. Life responds to your willingness to try, even when you're afraid. Something curious happens when you take these first steps. You begin to see signs that you are on the right path. Maybe someone mentions an opportunity you'd never considered. Maybe you find a book, a conversation, or a place that deeply resonates with you. It's no coincidence. It's the reflection of your energy changing, of your decision to open yourself to the new. It's like the universe is waiting for you to take that first step to show you that you're not alone, that there's more for you on the other side of your doubts. But to get there, you need to trust. Trust not only in the process, but in yourself, in that part of you that knows you deserve more, even when it's hard to believe. Now imagine for a moment what your life would look like if you stopped fearing change and embraced it as a natural part of your growth. If every time a door closed, instead of standing in front of it waiting for it to open, you chose to look for a window or even build your own exit. That's the life that awaits you when you choose to act from self-love instead of fear. But there's something else we need to explore together. What happens when you start moving forward and people or circumstances try to pull you back? Because the path to your transformation will not always be linear. And it's important to know how to respond when that happens. Stay with me, because what's coming could be the key to staying firm and moving forward toward the life you've always deserved. When you start moving forward, it is inevitable that some people or circumstances will try to drag you back. Not because they are necessarily ill-intentioned, but because your change confronts them with something they do not want to face, their own fear of growth. It is easier for them if you remain as you were, that version of you that perfectly fit into their expectations, the one that gave them what they needed without questioning if you were receiving the same. It's like trying to leave a room full of smoke. You know that outside there is fresh air, but others inside that room might tell you to stay, that the smoke isn't so bad, that it's easier to get used to it than to leave and face the unknown. And here lies the dilemma. Do you keep sacrificing your well-being to maintain peace with them? Or do you take the risk of seeking what you know you deserve? Carl Jung said that the heaviest burden a child can carry is the life unlived by their parents. And the same applies to many relationships. Sometimes we carry the unfulfilled expectations of those around us, and we do so without questioning it, as if it were our responsibility to fill the voids they couldn't fill themselves. But what happens when you decide to let go of that burden? What happens when you choose not to live up to the ideas of others, but to explore what it really means to be you? It is an act of courage, but also one that generates resistance. You may face comments like, "You've changed," or "You're not the same as before." And the truth is that you're not, and you shouldn't be. Changing is not betraying anyone. It is honoring your process. If those around you can't accept that evolution, it's not your responsibility to convince them to. Your only responsibility is to yourself. This brings us to something essential: learning to differentiate between those who support you and those who only want you to remain the same. The former are those who, even if they don't fully understand your decisions, support you because they see your happiness as a priority. The latter are those who, consciously or unconsciously, try to manipulate you into returning to a place where they feel comfortable. This is where the importance of listening to your intuition comes in. That inner voice that knows when something doesn't feel right, even if you can't fully explain it. Jung described it as the unconscious speaking to us through symbols and emotions. When something or someone makes you feel small, insecure, or limited, your intuition will let you know. The trick is to listen to it and act accordingly, even when doing so feels uncomfortable. And here is where many people stumble. They confuse the discomfort of growth with a sign that they should stop. But discomfort is not the enemy. It is the price you pay for a fuller life. Every time you encounter resistance, whether external or internal, it's a sign that you're breaking a pattern, that you're moving toward something new. Imagine for a moment a river flowing with force. Every stone in its path seems like a barrier, but in reality, it only redirects the flow, helping it find its natural course. You are like that river. Every challenge, every person trying to stop you, is just a stone in your path. You are not meant to stop there. You are meant to flow, to find the course that leads you where you need to be. But how do you stay firm when emotions mix in? Because let's admit it, letting go can be painful sometimes. It even makes you question if you're being too hard on yourself, if you should try once more. And that doubt is normal. It doesn't mean you're failing, it means you care. So how do you manage those emotions without letting them stop you? The answer is to anchor yourself in your why you decided to change, what you're seeking, what you're no longer willing to accept. Write down those reasons and repeat them if necessary, but never lose sight of them, because in moments of uncertainty, those reasons will be your guide. There's something important left to address: how to maintain your energy and motivation when the path feels long and the rewards seem distant. Stay with me, because what comes next could be exactly what you need to keep going with strength and clarity. Staying firm when the path feels endless can feel like carrying a weight that never lightens. But here's the curious part. It's not the weight that tires you, it's the way you carry it. That's why you need to find practices, thoughts, and moments that restore the energy you feel you've lost. It's like filling an empty glass. You can't keep pouring unless you stop once in a while to fill it again. Think about this. What makes you feel alive? I'm not talking about big goals or achievements, but those simple things that connect with you deeply. Maybe it's a walk outdoors, a moment of listening to music that inspires you, or simply a moment of silence with yourself. We often search for big solutions when what we really need are those small rituals that remind us who we are and why we are on this path. Jung mentioned that those who don't look inward look outward, and that's where many of us get lost. We try to find motivation in others' approval, in immediate results, or even by comparing ourselves to what others have achieved. But the true source of motivation doesn't come from what happens outside. It comes from what you choose to nurture inside. It's a daily commitment to yourself, to your values, and to the vision of the life you are building. Here's something powerful you can do to anchor yourself. Celebrate your progress, no matter how small. The problem is that we are so used to focusing on what we lack that we forget to recognize how far we've come. Every step you take, no matter how small it seems, is a victory in itself. Maybe today you managed to say no to something you would have previously accepted out of obligation. Maybe you took the time to rest instead of continuing on autopilot. Those moments are proof of your growth and deserve to be recognized. It's like climbing a mountain. If you only look at the summit, you'll feel overwhelmed by what's left. But if you occasionally stop, look down, and realize how far you've come, you'll find the motivation to keep climbing. The key isn't to obsess over the destination, it's to appreciate the journey. On the other hand, it's also important to protect your energy from what drains it. And this includes more than just people or situations. It includes your own thoughts. Those stories we sometimes tell ourselves about not being enough, about having made wrong decisions, or about whether we deserve what we're seeking. When those thoughts appear, remember this: they're not the truth. They are just part of the narrative you've learned to repeat. And you have the power to write a new one in which you don't need to know every step in advance, because you trust that the version of you that you are building will find the way. Sometimes that trust is tested. There will be days when everything feels heavier, when you'll doubt your ability to keep going. But those days don't define your progress. They're just a pause, an opportunity to readjust your steps and remind yourself why you started. Imagine that you're navigating an open sea. The waves won't always be calm. Now, what comes next is crucial. I want us to reflect together on how to build a clear vision of what you want for your life, so that you have a compass to guide you even when the path is unclear. Because when you know where you're heading, no matter how complicated the journey seems, what matters is that you're moving forward with purpose. And here's the truth you can't ignore. No one deserves to be treated as an option or a backup plan. You are not here to fill anyone's emotional voids, to settle for scraps of attention, or to be invisible in the lives of those who should value you. You are a privilege, a unique gift, a force that cannot be replaced. If someone can't see that, if someone doesn't know how to appreciate it, then they don't deserve the honor of being by your side. Self-love is not selfishness. It is respect for yourself. It's understanding that you were not born to beg for love, attention, or dignity. You are not born to endure silent suffering or to mold yourself to the expectations of others while abandoning yourself. It's time to stop that cycle of prioritizing others and begin prioritizing your peace, your happiness, your emotional health. Imagine for a moment what your life would look like if you stopped tolerating the intolerable, if you began setting clear boundaries and choosing only what adds to you, not what takes away. How different would your world look if you made your well-being your priority? That decision is in your hands. No one can make it for you. And here is the final message. You are not alone. We've all felt that restlessness, that emptiness telling us we deserve more, but we've stayed trapped by fear. But change is not impossible, and the emotional freedom you find by choosing yourself is worth every step. Now I want to know, have you ever had to walk away from a relationship, a place, or a situation that made you feel invisible or undervalued? How did your life change after making that decision? Leave your answer in the comments because what you share could inspire others to take that step they so desperately need. And remember this, peace and self-respect are not just for the moment when you choose yourself. They are now. Are you ready?